My husband's family made me clean their house for 6 years. They thought I was an uneducated small-town girl with nowhere else to go. But what they didn't know was that before I married into this family, I was a senior forensic investigator who unraveled million-dollar corporate fraud, and when their bank account got frozen overnight, they finally realized who I really was. But by then, it was already too late. The morning air in Oak Ridge, Connecticut, always carried a chill, but inside the Miller residence, the cold came from the people. For 6 years, Sarah had been the invisible engine of the house. While her husband, Mark, worked long hours at a mid-tier accounting firm, his mother, Evelyn, and his sister, Chloe, ruled the household with passive-aggressive efficiency. Sarah was a quiet woman who kept her head down, waking up at 5 a.m. to prepare breakfast, fold laundry, and manage the administrative chaos of a family that treated her like an underpaid, unappreciated housekeeper. Mark rarely defended her. "Their family, Sarah," he'd say, barely looking up from his phone. "Evelyn's just set in her ways. Just help them out, okay?" Sarah swallowed her pride again and again. But what none of them knew, not even Mark, was that before Sarah left her corporate life to care for her aging father, she had spent nearly a decade as a senior forensic accountant and structural asset analyst for one of the top risk assessment firms in New York. To the Millers, she was just Sarah, the girl from a small town who cooked dinner and kept quiet. Then came the offer that changed everything. It started on a Tuesday evening. Evelyn slammed a thick stack of legal documents onto the dining table right as Sarah was serving dessert. "Mark, we have a crisis," Evelyn said, her voice tight. "The estate taxes on your late grandfather's commercial property in Stamford are due next month. On top of that, the bank is refusing to release the trust funds until an official audit is cleared. If we can't clear the compliance holding by Friday, the property goes to auction and the family trust is wiped out." Mark, pale-faced, leafing through the papers. "Wait, how much do we owe?" $200,000 in unpaid levies and back taxes, Chloe chimed in, panic edging her voice. "Plus, the bank says there's a discrepancy in the historical filing from 8 years ago. We hired a local accountant, but he said the structure is too tangled to sort out in 3 days. We're going to lose everything, Mark. The house, the trust, all of it." Mark buried his face in his hands. "We're ruined. We don't have that kind of money, and no firm will take an emergency audit on 2 days' notice." Sarah quietly set down the coffee pot. She looked at the panicked faces around the table. The same people who, just 2 hours ago, had criticized her for using the wrong fabric softener. "Let me see the files," Sarah said calmly. Evelyn snorted, rolling her eyes. "Sarah, please. This is high-level corporate finance, not a grocery list. Go start the dishwasher." "Evelyn," Sarah said, her voice dropping an octave, carrying a cold, razor-sharp authority they had never heard before. "Show me the files." Mark looked up, startled by her tone. Reluctantly, he pushed the folder across the table. Sarah pulled out her glass frames from her sweater pocket, slipped them on, and began flipping through the documents. Her eyes moved with terrifying speed, scanning numbers, tax IDs, and corporate registry stamps. Within 90 seconds, her demeanor completely shifted. The timid daughter-in-law vanished. In her place sat a seasoned investigator. "This isn't a tax error," Sarah stated, looking directly at Evelyn. "The bank flagged this because of a shadow shell entity registered under an offshore EIN in 2018. Someone tried to clear the property's lien by routing funds through an unregistered LLC." Evelyn's face went completely white. Chloe stopped hyperventilating and froze. How do you know what that means?" Mark stammered. "Because I spent 8 years unraveling tax fraud for the Department of Financial Services," Sarah said coolly. She closed the folder with a sharp snap. "Your late grandfather didn't make a mistake. Someone in this family transferred 40% of the property's equity out of the trust 6 years ago and hid the paper trail." Silence hung thick in the room. Can you fix it?" Mark asked, his voice trembling. "Can you save the estate?" Sarah looked at Evelyn, whose condescending smile had completely disintegrated into sheer terror. "I can," Sarah said slowly. "I can trace the original capital transfer, draft a compliance waiver for the bank, and execute an emergency stay before the Friday auction deadline. Evelyn leaned forward, her hands shaking. Sarah, please. You have to help us. We'll pay you. We'll do whatever you want. Sarah stood up from the table, stacking her empty dessert plate on top of Mark's. I'll fix it, Sarah said softly. But first, Evelyn, you're going to finish clearing this table. And Chloe, the kitchen floors need scrubbing. Over the next 48 hours, the Miller house became a war room. Sarah took over the home office, pulling up state registry databases, forensic ledgers, and old property deeds. Mark, Evelyn, and Chloe tiptoed around her like servants around a queen, bringing her coffee, managing the meals, and waiting anxiously for her updates. By Thursday midnight, Sarah found the final piece of the puzzle. The shadow transfer from 2018 wasn't an accident. It was a deliberate attempt by Evelyn's late brother to siphon money before he passed, leaving a structural debt trap for whoever inherited the estate. Sarah drafted a 30-page forensic report, backed by federal compliance statutes, that completely exonerated the current trust from liability and forced the bank to release the frozen funds immediately. On Friday morning, 30 minutes before the court deadline, the bank officially accepted the filing. The auction was canceled. The Miller estate was saved. Mark collapsed into a chair in relief. You did it, Sarah. You saved us. I don't know how to thank you. Evelyn walked into the office carrying a cup of tea, her expression a mix of relief and profound embarrassment. Sarah, I don't know what to say. We treated you poorly. We didn't realize who you were. Thank you. Sarah looked at the three of them, her husband, who had never stood up for her, and his family, who only valued her when her intellect saved their wealth. She picked up her leather briefcase, which she had packed an hour earlier, and set a single sheet of paper on the desk. What's this? Mark asked, his smile fading. That is a power of attorney release for the trust, Sarah said evenly. And underneath it is a petition for legal separation. Mark gasped. What? Sarah, no, we're a family now. You saved us. No, Mark, Sarah said, pulling her coat over her shoulders. I saved myself. I proved to you and to myself that I was never the person you treated me as. I didn't fix your trust out of loyalty to this family. I fixed it to prove that my silence was a choice, not a weakness. She picked up her luggage standing by the front door. The bank fees are paid, the house is yours, and the dishes are in the sink, Sarah said, looking Evelyn dead in the eye. Make sure you use the right fabric softener. Without waiting for an answer, Sarah walked out into the crisp morning air, got into her car, and drove away without looking back once. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to subscribe. There are many more untold drama stories waiting to be heard.